Hello, apprentices of chaos. Let's begin with this. Shading with chaotic sorcerer, ZTC. Shall we? So, first off, we shall get to the basis of how shading really works. So, you need a few levels of shading, and it has to do with, intensity of it. Like, the start's just, a few... This is going to be linear shading, but the principle of how I do it is able to be used for many different shading techniques. You have to start with, very light lines, then a few more light lines, a little more in there, then you get a little more pressure put onto it, along with a bit more lines, and you keep on doing this until you get to your final level of shading, which is basically just a lot of lines. The intensity of the lines is so much that it's basically covered. Now, I'll go on to explain how this works with the basis of these four shapes. These are the most basic of the shapes, and you'll see them most often. So, the the cube is usually the easiest. I'm going to be doing it where the light is like this, where the light is coming from here, basically. Oh god, I'm going to say basically a lot, aren't I? So the light's going to be coming down in this direction for most of them. So this one is, the square is usually the most easiest of them. It usually just has one being the top square, maybe two or three being the side square, and 4 or 5 being the square here, and 6 is always the shadow on every one of them. Your darkest one is always there. Circles are... Spheres are kind of hard, but I've learned a bit about them. They're mostly circles. They're mostly just circles. Start with 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Depending if you have another line, you can have another line of them. The shadow must always be 6 though, because it's the darkest point, because it's the, shadow. Triangles or cones are sometimes a little bit harder. I might need to nah, I'm good. So, from my experience with them, they're kind of split up in... It's kind of a weird thing, but it's kind of not. It's 1, 2, 3, 4/5. You get the gist. It's kind of for all of them the same. This one, however, the cylinder, hey, I actually said it right this time, is very similar to a mixture between the square and the cone, which is kind of obvious. 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll be going into these when I actually get to the drawing of the shading, but I thought I'd give an explanation of how these go before I started. So first off, we shall start with the lines on the top one. The density of the lines needs to be very light for the start of it. The density of the lines for this needs to be like really dense, and you need to put pressure on it. For the first two of the levels of shading, you need to be a bit light if you're doing linear shading, but for others you don't have to necessarily. And you can always find your own way of doing it. I like to go with certain like lines that are pre-existing so that it kind of gives it even more of a 3D look. Which I know I've said that a lot in my videos I've done before, but it just sounds good. For like the shadows, I've been told by a teacher I followed for school that the shadows for certain things have to overlap a bit. Because they're not just straight shadows. But maybe I'll get into that at some point. In a different video, maybe. But for spheres, you've gotta be like... I don't like doing that way. You've gotta make a few circles, so to speak. And then you've got a little bit more circles. And you get harder as you go on, as I've stated. For linear shading, you can't just go scribbly for it. You need to be very specific. There are many other shading techniques. Some of them don't require just straight lines. However, this seems to be the easiest one to, like, get the basis of. Now you've got a sphere. Somewhat. Now we shall begin on the... almost said triangle again. Cone. And there you have your cone. Kind of. Never said I knew how to do this correctly. Now we shall move on to the... Shoot, I forgot what it was called. Cylinder! I don't know what I'm doing half the time, it seems. hopefully you can understand how this works. Hopefully this makes sense. And that's the cylinder done. I hope this can help people figure out how to do shading. Maybe I'll do more of these teaching things. Who knows? I think I might be a little bad at it. Well, ta-ta, apprentices of chaos. I shall be off. Hopefully these come out faster. They probably won't, but who knows? I'll be off now. Ta-ta.